Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Year 12. This is the first video I have done, which is going to be on YouTube. And I hope it goes all right. Hopefully it will improve. My presentation skills get better. Now, the point of what I'm trying to do tonight is to give you some chunk size information, because I know how difficult the NEA project can be. And so far, we've obviously been on the field trip. We've been to Nettlecombe, done Porlock, done Minehead, and so forth. So what I want to do is I want to kind of go do short bite-sized chunks to give you some guidance on each of the different chapters of the NEA project, which is so very important to you. In class, we've covered, and for homework, we've covered the introduction and the methodology. So what I want to do is just tonight, I want to give you this chunk so that you can look through your introduction and kind of pick out the things that you need to be doing, but you're doing it, not me. So all I'm really doing is kind of really explaining the instructions again and going through the mark scheme so that you can do the work, I stay within the rules, and you produce the best introduction that's possible to you. Okay, so I'm just going to share a couple of things here. I'm a little bit slow at doing this, so bear with me. And I'll just start with a couple of reminders about the NEA. Okay, if it works. There we go, brilliant. Okay, so it's worth 20% of your mark, your overall A-level mark, and many students in the last few years have gone on to get some brilliant project marks, and it really will help you. If you're a C grade student, a good C grade student, it could well get you, consolidate you getting that B, possibly even some situations, maybe even getting an A. So it's that bit that you're totally in control, the hard work that you put in, the thinking, the blood, sweat and toil, whatever you want to call it, can really make a difference. But we will do this the correct way. We will do it with your input, not my input telling you what to do, because it is independent. Now, as you can see, there are 4 areas. That's part of the mark scheme. They all add up to 60 marks, 20% of the overall A level. And I call them chapters, and I subdivide these 2 particular sections in a slightly different way to the way this is demonstrated here. This is fairly straightforward, 10 marks. The methodology is also straightforward, but if you look at the combination of both, that's 25 out of 60 marks. That's nearly half your marks, and something that you really should be getting very high marks on. Okay, so more so than this, I would say this is the hardest, the longest, the most time-consuming section, and it's the one where great projects end up being good projects, because it is the most difficult bit. There's a lot more to it and a lot more time and effort and thinking that needs to go on there, and that really does differentiate between the very best and the good students. Okay, so you shouldn't be looking at this as something as a quick fix, something to get SWOT out of the way. But if you really put your time and effort into this, I can't see why you can't get a B right up to A* in these projects. And I will be proud, because I know you will have done it, and I am only purely facilitating this process. Anyway, let's kick on. Okay, so this is how I would set out the project. So when you've done the final thing in year 13, there will be a candidate record form. You all know that very well from the work we've done on that. Title page, contents page. This bit, as a moderator, I don't really see how important that is. It just gives an overview. Certainly don't mark it per se. So if it's missing, don't worry about it. Here's our first chapter, introduction. Second chapter, words of shorten it, methodology. Now, I combine these 2 sections. Well, when I say you can, if you want to, combine them. I call it the data presentation, analysis, interpretation. So if you want a better words, where you've got your visuals, your graphs, your maps, your tables, and your description, explanation of them in that section. Quite weighted section. 20 marks out of the 60, 1/3. And then finally we come to, I even subdivide these. You have an overall conclusion and the evaluation of the project, the strengths, the weaknesses of each of the different chapters, way forwards, the key things that you've learned, the ethical considerations and so forth. And then finally, the appendix, the bibliography. So that's kind of the very broad purpose. And then I have a bit simplistic title page, contents page, and so forth. And then we come to the introduction. So there are 2 key areas of this. But I'll go through them systematically. So you will have chosen a title which needs to be specific. It needs to be, we use the SMART. I know it's an old-fashioned term, but specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-related. So there's clarity to the overall title. An investigation. So an investigation into a specific area, like Porlock, Minehead, or wherever you've chosen to do. it needs to have something that you see, a clear theme. What we don't want is something really waffly or unrealistic. So the area needs to be, I say, small enough. London is too big. Yeah, Stratford within London is still big, but at least it's more specific. Porlock within Somerset is quite specific, and you saw it's quite a small area, even though it was really, really cold. So once you've done that, I would start with this very first paragraph here, 4 lines maybe, just kind of saying why you chose it, why you did it, what interests you, just a kind of nice, gentle introduction into the project. And again, the format that I'm telling you is not compulsory, so you can mix it around. Just be logical, just be coherent. So, you know, these are just suggestions for a very basic framework. Then I would have my next section as what research questions or hypotheses, or both, did you use? And the recommendation really is between about 2 and 4. 1 maybe is a bit too broad. 4 is fine. 5, I think maybe you're being too ambitious. And the way you should think of it, the analogy, it's like a jigsaw. So the overall puzzle solution is you're trying to solve the title, and each of your, I'm going to use hypotheses, and each of them tries to answer a different strand of that title. So when you come to your conclusion, you can answer each of the hypotheses on their own, not conclude them, but also draw upon that to kind of reflect back on the title and answer that overall. Okay. The second bullet point, so if I hover the mouse around here, it's really important that you justify each of your hypotheses. And what that means is, why did you choose them? What's the point of those hypotheses? How are they going to help you answer your overall title? So that's important to do, and that shows a level of understanding, and you will be given credit for that if it's really, really good. Now, some students, what they do is they do that, and they also embed in that the key terms, the theories, concepts, background that kind of goes along, that blending it. And again, there's all sorts of different ways of doing this, but just be logical. And, you know, ultimately I've got to mark it, so it needs to be clear. Then we go on to a bit that I've missed out here. Now, if you've done it in your candidate record form, or the CRF, that's fine. But I do an insurance policy. I say put it in your candidate record form, but also put a little section here. And I've missed it out here. And that is the context of the project. So what part of the specification you're actually looking at it. And I said, you know, identify it in the spec, put it into your project, maybe tailor it to the location that you're talking about, the bits of geography. And that clearly shows that you've chosen something for specification. This bit here, I personally would do a short written description of the location of your site, but also through a series of maps. So like you might show like a national map, a regional map, and a local map. Bearing in mind, I think border makes it look really professional, color, so forth, a key, highlighting a few things. Directions, a scale, and some of the best ones have even used geospatial data, things like grid references, longitude and latitude. Just gives it that extra oomph, that special sort of touch that you put the time and effort into it. So just moving on to the next part of the introduction, the background and the theory. So the background can be things like, and you can see in this first bullet point here, it can be a number of things. So it could be the geology of the area. Now that's particularly relevant if you're doing something on natural processes taking place. It could be just something to do with the sediment cell, you know, one of the 11 sediment cells in the ICZM. It could be the human geography, how the town, say, of Porlock, so the village of Porlock or the town of Taunton has grown over time. Things that you think are relevant, that may influence your results, how, or certainly maybe set up the project that you've looked at, you know, the underpinning geography, that maybe the sea defences that you're looking at, why they were there in the first place. Okay, so that's the background of it. This is also important, key terms and concepts. So a key term would be something like swash. A concept would be something maybe like a longshore drift. And maybe going into something like models, which is a gradual blend from terms, concepts to models. Model might be something like a sediment cell, where you have a diagram, a systems diagram, where you're showing inputs and outputs, transfers and things like that. Clearly, they all need to be relevant, but they are massively important to put into your introduction, because not only do you get credit in your introduction, you're going to be needing to talk about those in your analysis and also in your conclusion. So they don't just affect the 10 marks you get in the introduction, they also affect the marks later on in the project. This is also important, sourcing. So sourcing means showing the examiner, the marker, where you got your information from. So what textbook, what pamphlet, what leaflet, what video source, what website, what journal, that type of thing. And it shows that you've put the time and effort into the background to build your knowledge and your expertise in the subject. Okay, and you'll see that in the example that I show you a bit later on. The study framework, again, is one of those, another, I don't think particularly essential, but, you know, if you're looking to, you know, do every bit to nail the marks, then, you know, it always just gives a little extra dimension to it. This is basically an overview, really, of how you're laying out the projects, how you know, which sections you did, how you implemented the project, how you're going to find out your results. Again, it's not massively important, but again, it's a nice overview. Sometimes helps the moderator see where you're going with it, but I wouldn't get too caught up on it. Okay, and again, just an overview of the things I've said here. So there's that opening paragraph, key questions which must be justified, the context, so the specification links, which again I've missed out here, that's my bad, clear location maps, background to the area that supports the NEA, key terms, concepts and theories that underpin the project. And the next thing I'm going to go on to is I'm going to show you the mark scheme. Which comes from the syllabus. You can all get this, right? And I will photocopy, email, whatever, send in smoke signals, whatever you want to do to get that information to you. Okay, all right, let's just come out of that and I'll stop sharing. I'm using Zoom only a few times, so bear with me if I'm a bit clunky. And let's bring this up. And I'm going to share the screen and hopefully, here we go, voila. Here's the mark scheme. Right, so this is just one section of the mark scheme. Remember I said earlier on, there are 4 different sections. We call them areas. So this one here, there's the area, to want of words, again, it's just really the introduction from your point of view, but not to underplay the importance of research. That doesn't mean just looking at one book. Now, typically 16, 17 and 18-year-olds, they just want to rush through and get on with the project. And they just want to sort of breeze through the few key terms and don't really want to do that bit. But it is really important to do. But anyway, let's get down to the marks. Now, all 4 areas have this level system, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you work from right to left, you can see the marks get higher. This is your A-star territory. Technically speaking, 8 out of 6 in level 3, it's pretty much A-star. 80% is going to be, in most years, an A-star project. So let's have a look at a couple of the criteria. So this first one, it says, define the research questions which underpin the field investigations. So that's your investigation title and the hypotheses or key questions that you use to support them. So the quality of them will determine which level that you're in here. But it's a bit more than that. I'll be looking to see that, you know, they're clearly linked to the spec, but also, and I suppose it's a bit more hidden here, that's where your justification, that's where your explanation of those key questions is so important, or the hypothesis is so important. I'll look at that and I go, this student has really come up with some good questions. There's a range of questions. They clearly link to the title. There's a bit like a jigsaw. They all do kind of answer a different part of the title. And, you know, there's a bit of sophistication going on there. And so the justification really nails it. And then I think, oh, I really want to give you level 4. And most students at school have pretty much got into this level. And I think the worst, or the most basic version I've seen, I think someone got a 6. So that's in 3 years, okay, since we've been doing this. Now the second bit, this is probably the most detailed bit. And it says here to research relevant literature sources and understand and write up the theory, things like comparative context, for the research questions that you've come up with. So what does that mean in English? Well, basically what it means is the background, the key terms, the concepts, the theories. Now, that's the information that you would need to give to the reader, myself, or someone who's intelligent but didn't necessarily know geography that well, or that aspect of geography well. And when they read your introduction, they should get a good understanding. So they know the location, know the background, because the background can affect your results and the conclusions that you come up with. So they need to really be familiar with it. They also need to be really tooled up with all the key terms that are necessary. So when they're looking at your methodology, results, analysis, and so forth, they understand all the things that you're talking about. Okay, and that demonstrates also your good understanding. They need to be relevant, so you don't want to put anything that's just waffle in there. You don't want to throw the kitchen sink of geography at it and you get this like 20, 30 page introduction. That would be waffle, and it would kind of undermine you a little bit. And although the word limit of 3,000 to 4,000 is not an exact limit, and many students write 10, 15,000 words, if it is waffly, it will penalise you. So you don't want to do that. So it does need to be relevant. The other aspect of the key terms and theory concept aspect is you can make predictions. So you can say, this is what I think I should expect to see. So you kind of give the rationale about why you included those terms and ideas, theories in your introduction. But also what you can do is when you get onto your analysis, you can use that information to help explain your results or compare to your results and so forth. The thing that needs to be brought out with this statement, the sourcing. Now you have to prove to the examiner, your teacher, me, that you have researched this. Now some of that is obvious in front of me because I'm seeing key terms, I'm seeing theories, I'm seeing background on Porlock, on Minehead, or wherever it be. So clearly I can see you've researched, but that's not enough. You need to have a bibliography at the back, which is a long list of all the different sorts of sources that you've gone to. Again, that's not enough. You need to source within the text. You need to put in brackets a certain textbook, a name of an author, name of an article, name of a website, things like that. Do it 6 to 8 times. And another technique some students use is they sometimes put footnotes at the bottom of the page and they put little numbers within the text throughout the introduction, spread through the introduction. I like to call it like a peppering effect. Okay, and it shows that you've researched. You don't do it, I can't credit you. So you need to really have done it at least 4 times. But to be safe, because from year to year, the advice changes, and as people get better, they make it harder sometimes. I would say 6 to 8 times, and some of you will do many more times than that, but really go to town with it. Okay, anyway, so let's, to kind of wrap this up a little bit, let's actually show you an example. Okay, so last bit. Believe me, trust me. So here we go. So let's get this title page up first of all. So this is someone's project. I've kept their name anonymous because they've been kind enough to kind of an old piece of work, and I'm only showing bits of this. So again, I'm only going to show you little clips of this just to give you an idea of what makes a good project. It's an old project, so within safe sort of territory, and actually none of you have done this project, so I feel safe in showing you this. But if you look at the title, it's very clear, looking at the processes, looks at how those processes affect the profile, so like the shape of the beach, the characteristics, the sediment size, things like the width of the beach of Porlock Bay. So it's a clearly defined area, nice straightforward question. Going through our structure, look at this contents page, really nice and straightforward. I've seen more detailed ones where they put page numbers and subdivide it. That's just as good. Pagination, which is important. It's a really highly, professionally produced piece of work, this, I think, anyway, in my humble opinion. Moving on. It's a clear title for the first chapter. And then we come on to the first bit. This is this opening paragraph. Now, this student has done an opening, it looks like 3 paragraphs, very detailed sort of purpose about what they're doing. So you could see where you could slim this down. 700-800 words is, I think, the recommendation for an introduction. This student has gone into the thousands. And again, I will not take marks off you if you go into the way over the word limit, as long as it's relevant. And this piece of work has been a labour of love by this student. It really is good, I think. So anyway, that's that opening sort of salvo. Then we've got the hypothesis. Look, little subheading. This is very clear. 3 hypotheses, 1, 2, and 3. And underneath it, the explanation of it. That's the justification of it. Look, the width, height, and gradient of Porlock Bay increases along the beach as a result of marine processes. And then said longshore drift and deposition. Okay, you can always question a few bits and bobs here and there. Look at this very clear, detailed justification of it there. And that process is done here and here. Notice the sourcing. This student has used sourcing at the bottom. But if I remember rightly, I'm trying to think if it actually happens in this page here. I may have just missed it. I would encourage you to put some sourcing within the paragraphs as you go along as well. So there's no question that you've sourced it. It hasn't got to just pass me. It's got to go to external moderators. I don't want to run the risk of you losing marks, especially if you've done something fantastic. Okay, so believe me, this is a very long introduction, and I think this is a level 4. I would purport this to be something 9 or 10 marks. Okay, anyway, so if we move on, you can see there's some background about the shingle ridge. I'm just trying to think if I showed you the map. No, anyway, apologies for backwards and forwards there. Bit of background, as you know, when we went to Porlock, there's a shingle ridge, clear information there, and look, there's that sourcing within the text. Here they've used kind of quotation marks to do that. But again, look at the sourcing at the bottom. Clearly well researched. Use of maps, visuals. I like this bit here, kind of breaks up the text. The way this student has done a wraparound here. This student's actually done it on a PowerPoint, set the page up on a PowerPoint, which makes it much easier to use than Word. And again, there's sourcing going on. There's brilliant sourcing going on. It's all relevant. And there's the location maps. You can see the student has done a slightly different layout. So I encourage individuality. Just make sure it's logical and you get the same ingredients, but maybe in a different order. And you can see these maps here. Look, there's a nice border around it. There's the direction, the scale. There's a marker point on to show there. You can do things like put arrows to go from there to there to there. You guys are really good at ICT skills, far better than me. And you can like zone in areas by drawing circles and so forth. And you might even put a key on there to like highlight a few extra things. But look, there's the written description. So very clearly located. Here, there's a specification link. This student, again, you might argue maybe more than what's needed. But if you look at this thing here, I like this. So they're not just copied stuff from the specification, it's been worded, changing a few of the words to kind of tailor it to the actual project itself. Okay? Anyway, then key terms, look at the use of diagrams here. Now, if any diagrams come from textbooks and things like that, it's really important that you source these because they're not your own. That's fine to do. It's the writing you mustn't copy. You must put that into your own words, but otherwise it's plagiarism. And again, don't just put stuff in there. Try to make the relevance clear to the examiner. And there is huge amounts of detail. I mean, if you're going to be super, super critical, I might ask this student, did you need to talk about every single keyword that you've used here? For example, did you really talk about cavitation in there? So there are opportunities to slim down, but get everything down and then you can always slim out a few things a little bit later on. And you can see, look, again, sourcing, so it's well sourced. I think that would be a level 4, in my opinion. I think it'd be 9 or 10. I personally would give this a 10 out of 10 because it's just a super piece of work. I'm sure you can come up with your own individual styles. So anyway, just stopping the sharing so you can see my ugly face again. You may have forgotten who I am. So I'm going to aim to post this on YouTube. This is my second version. The first version I forgot to record. And also I had the sound effects of different dogs, children, but you'd be glad to know Geography Graham didn't make his appearance. Now, I'm going to stop there. Wish I could see all you guys. I'm going to see if I can post this to YouTube, put a link in to show my homework. And you can email me things that you're not sure about, you want some clarification. I want to get just a brief idea where your introductions are at. That's why I've kind of asked you to show me that. But again, I cannot draft mark anything. That's really important that you get that. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. Adios amigos, and I'll see you on the next video clip, hopefully. Anyway, ta-ta, everybody. In meeting.